Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Week 4 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership. We join myself, Ryan Sipple, for Newcastle United Foundation versus Sevenoaks. Let's go through the squads quickly before I talk about how these two fared yesterday. Newcastle United Foundation, Aaron Guthrie, Kieran Steer, Ollie Crawshaw, Emily Davey, Lee Armstrong and Cole Simpson. Sam Mackay, Matthew Harrison not present today. And Sevenoaks, they have Stanley Ball, Carl Alexander, James Mason and George Shippey. A similar statement can be applied to Mr. Chris King. Isn't available for selection, so if Sevenoaks are going to get something from this fixture, it's going to be with the 4 players present on the court currently. Assessing the live league standings, it's been a tough game week 4 for Sevenoaks. 7-0 defeat to Greenbank was followed by 3-0 defeat to Teesside before a very cagey 0-0 draw against GBG Knights yesterday afternoon. But they were plagued with battery issues, and that is the reality of playing 3 games in a day when it comes to that third and final one. Power-related issues are almost an inevitable factor. Newcastle United Foundation, however, have had a fairly mixed weekend. Yesterday, they opened with a 2-0 defeat to Greenbank before a 0-0 draw with Villa Rockets. This morning, they were fantastic. It was a real pleasure to watch them win against GBG Knights 2-0, where one Emily Davey, who's making her National League debut this weekend, got on the score sheet. But the squads are in the centre. At the same time, Middlesbrough versus GBG Knights will be contested on Court A. But you're joining myself, Ryan Sipple, and now Mr. Nick Woodward for the Action Live. How are you, Nick?
Morning, I'm good, thank you.
It's good to see you.
And you, and the competition here. It's looking still tight, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. So many battles to be decided at the top and the bottom. Sevenoaks desperately trying to claw themselves away from the relegation zone. A win here and a loss potentially for GBG Knights would see them venture out of the bottom 2 placements for the first time in 2 or 3 weekends. The squads as they start: Newcastle have Lee Armstrong, Ollie Crawshaw, Cole Simpson and Kieran Steer, the exact squad that they started that GBG Knights game with. And as already mentioned, with only 4 players present, the squad of Sevenoaks will be unchanged. They may look to switch things up and change positions up, but in terms of personnel, it will be James Mason, Kyle Alexander, George Shippey and Stanley Ball as Newcastle United Foundation applying pressure early on. Kieran Steer back to Ollie Crawshaw, across the court to Cole Simpson. Some really nice triangles, well read by Kyle Alexander. Best opportunity of the game so far.
Just looking at the long-term stats that Jeff provides us, this is a fixture that's really gone Newcastle's way, hasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Sevenoaks have historically struggled in this fixture. And already they're knocking on the door here as Kieran Steer into the box, meets the front bumper of Ollie Crawshaw and then attacked secondary from Kieran Steer. James Mason does just enough to keep it from rolling over the goal line. Looked almost a certain goal for the Scotland International. There were big cheers from the mezzanine above But fantastic work from James Mason. It remains Newcastle 0, Sevenoaks 0. Now Ollie Crawshaw comes over to take. Kieran Steer the closest option. It was a very narrow margin which saw Newcastle get the 3 points over Sevenoaks in October. Game week 1 of the 25-26 season. Ollie Crawshaw, the single goal scorer in that one. It ricochets off George Shippey. Out for another corner.
Very bold with their player out here. I think they've got all the players at the level with the box.
Which is...
No, not quite.
Which is very unfamiliar as Kieran Steer once again so dangerous at that back post. Largely firefighting for Sevenoaks as Stanley Ball just picks it off back to Kyle Alexander. Can't quite get the angle on that crossfield ball to George Shippey. Full 360 from Ollie Crawshaw. Heavy touch from Stanley Ball. The two number 4s battling away in the centre. One of the strongest dribblers in the division. Ollie Crawshaw out to Kieran Steer, across the box, can't quite get the purchase. Follow-up effort from Cole Simpson. Fairly relentless in the opening 3.5 minutes from Newcastle. Out wide. So defensive from Sevenoaks. Even a point would be incredibly valuable to them. But early strikes have so often been their undoing as Cole Simpson looks to replicate Kieran Steer's positional play on that top right-hand corner, attacking the right-hand post. As of yet, nothing able to bypass Mason and Alexander, who's doing a great job, although they will struggle to sustain this level of solidity for the 40 minutes as Simpson back to Crawshaw across the box, off the back wheel of James Mason. Too much pace for Stanley Ball.
Interesting for Sevenoaks, the goal difference is much better than the others. Is this where you gamble and better losing 3-0 but trying to win 1-0?
Yeah, but potentially.
Or
it's
just eking out those points.
It's the goals that they haven't conceded compared to some of their rivals, as James Mason looked far more confident than I did that ball was going clear of the right-hand post. But Sevenoaks only scored 4 goals this season. It's just the fact they've conceded 37. GBG Knights 45 above them. Muscle Warriors 63 below them. Not far off double, so that's the only factor that sees them have a more favourable goal difference than the teams immediately around them. As Kieran Steer into Ollie Crawshaw, but I think it's really important that we apply the context. Of course, mid-season, Sevenoaks sadly lost one of their most important players in Miles Miller, and since then they've had to completely switch things up, not to mention the fact that George Shippey and Stanley Ball both playing in their first ever season in the top flight, only their second ever season at National League level. Both of them won the title with Muscle Warriors last season, so incredibly inexperienced. I don't think there would have been a great deal of expectation on their young shoulders. They have some very rare territory in the Newcastle half. Can they make it count? Mason into Shippey. Across the box. Mason, full 180, ricochets kindly to George Shippey. Wasn't quite wide enough. Stanley Ball now across the box. Off the back of Lee Armstrong's chair. Much better from Sevenoaks.
That point you were making earlier about experience, obviously Kyle Alexander, very experienced, but James Mason with more experience
James
probably
Mason
than the other two put together, and yet he's still young, isn't he?
Yeah, very much so. James Mason, I think, has been playing competitively for probably 4 or 5 years now, starting off with Brighton and then moving over to Sevenoaks. Can have a connect it there. Really nice wide distribution. You can see what Stanley Ball wants to do there, but Ollie Crawshaw, as he does so often, reads the intention of his opposition. But Sevenoaks have settled somewhat and are looking to impose themselves in an attacking sense. As this first half goes on, Kieran Steer just jumping there, not observing the 5 metres. Surely any further infringements will see Paul Pearson go over to give him a little telling off. A scoreline that will please Sevenoaks is the fact that Middlesbrough are a goal to the good against GVG Knights, a result that would almost certainly guarantee their safety in the Premiership for 26-27 because of how closely contested it is at the bottom, and the fact that Middlesbrough had already done a lot of the early season work to get that point accumulation up and that buffer over the jeopardy spots.
I think they're showing us why they are where they are in the table, aren't they, Sevenoaks? They're not quite putting the attacks together, but their defence is solid.
Kieran Steer over to take. Just shy of 9 minutes played. Newcastle 0, Sevenoaks 0, into the box. Ricochets and pinballs between Ollie Crawshaw and Carl Alexander. The whistle in the mouth of Paul Pearson. Just trying to understand what the decision is.
Oh.
Kieran Steer receives yellow. I think that if it's dissent, he is going to have a sin bin. I can only assume it's for...
The ref kind of indicated like it might have been something earlier on.
Yeah.
Pointed up the pitch, didn't he? Perhaps that infringement coming in and out on the kick in.
Potentially.
But play didn't start.
Has to be careful now. Kieran Steer.
So we're not in a world yet where we can hear the ref's mics. I can see they're all mic'd up. But
they are all mic'd up, and that's a recent development that all the officials can communicate with one another, which is fantastic, and it's definitely helped kind of the decision-making process, and it means that the referees can maintain their positions on either wings, but are in each other's ears.
But not ours yet.
No, not yet. Ollie Crawshaw just entices George Shippey in. Front bumper pick off from Kieran Steer. Unselfish from Cole Simpson. Desperately trying to break this press and pressure as it ricochets kindly to Cole Simpson off George Shippey. Back to Crawshaw. Into Kieran Steer. Look to attack it. Absolutely relentless from those 3 attacking players of Newcastle.
They're not doing anything wrong, but they're going to have to do something slightly different, aren't they?
They
to
are.
Break Sevenoaks down.
And they've made a change to try and force the fact. It's Kieran Steer coming off. Emily Davey coming on, which is great to see. Anyone that tuned into that GBG Knights game would have seen her score her first ever National League goal. And she was very good value for it as well. As Mason looks to switch. You can see he's constantly scanning and assessing the position of George Shippey, but he would need to ensure so much power and accuracy on that crossfield ball. Otherwise it will invite a shot, an attempt, space from Ollie Crawshaw. who connects so cleanly with those 180s.
Kyle very casually out and knocking it away. The pace has dropped off a bit from Newcastle, hasn't it?
Yeah, which I'm sure will please Sevenoaks, because it would have been almost impossible to maintain that defensive shape for the entirety of the game. As George Shippey into James Mason, just trying to bypass Cole Simpson, flicked over to George Shippey, but prevented by Ollie Crawshaw. Emily Davey yet to get a touch of the ball. Crawshaw working away. There's a gap there to be capitalised on. Two very heavy coming together from Mason and Alexander. You can see how much passion they have to prevent that goal from going in. Sends the shockwaves through the body of the Sevenoaks captain.
Again, another solid few minutes from Sevenoaks.
Crawshaw returns the favour to Cole Simpson across the box. Does meet Emily Davey for her first touch. Just follows that up. Trying to flick it round and just swipes into George Shippey. No malice.
I think she was more shocked than they were.
She puts her hand up in apology. And Sevenoaks get the free kick, quickly taken by James Mason.
Ooh. I think
it's a reoccurring theme if you're going to refer to Kyle Alexander almost wheeling.
Should his wheels be further down?
They are.
Or?
His caster wheels are down, but. Right. I think the way he's leaning back slightly puts kind of his centre of mass behind or aligned with his back wheels. So certainly when he's going for a ball at full speed, there is a tendency for him to go onto two wheels, or certainly rear on the back. And fairly disappointing that from Emily Davey. Should be a little bit wider, which would allow either the option to swipe into it with a bit more accuracy, or affords the option of the 180. But these are things she will learn the more she plays, the more weekends she's present at.
You mentioned it was the first goal. Is this her first weekend?
First ever weekend in the National League, yes. It's been a fairly meteoric rise from the Newcastle number 7. She's been, within the last month or so, she's played her first cup game. She's been enrolled on the FA's Regional Emergent Talent Programme, and now she's present at Gameweek 4 of the Premiership. So it shows the faith and the trust that the coaches have put in her. And as I mentioned in their game against GBG Knights, because they've got such a good accumulation of points now, Newcastle, and they're not really fighting for one of the top placements, they have the flexibility and the luxury to experiment, to trial, to test things, to put players in different positions, because relegation isn't a possibility, the title isn't a possibility. So why not throw caution to the wind and experiment in game weeks 4 and 5? Maybe when it comes to their fixture in the John Good Group WFA Cup, they can be a bit more assertive and assured, but there's no reason why they can't throw caution to the wind almost, as it makes its way over to Emily Davey, flicked back to Cole Simpson. Certainly the intention blocked by James Mason.
Still look very calm at the back, Mason and Alexander. Again, they're not really getting more than one. You can't call it a pass if it doesn't finish, but haven't managed to build anything, Sevenoaks, have they?
No, 2-on-1 in favour of Newcastle. Had it not been that, I think Stanley Ball did just make a little bit of contact with the back of a Newcastle chair. No real options on for Ollie Crawshaw. I suspect he's looking for the return pass. Ooh. Just squeezes its way through, but Mason adjusts into Ollie Crawshaw, looking to switch play. Brilliantly read by James Mason there. Completely cut out the option.
That. It was a gamble as well, wasn't it? He left a bit of the goal open, but took the ball out from Alexander. Back with Newcastle again, dying, well, not quite seconds, but last few minutes.
Substitute signalled, sees Aaron Guthrie come on in place of Emily Davies, so a short cameo for her. I'm sure she'll feature once again in this game. But it shows that Jamie Harrison constantly tinkering, trying to find that best formula. Swing and a miss from Alexander. Play slightly stretched and open. Can Newcastle capitalise? Ollie Crawshaw over to Cole Simpson. Aaron Guthrie for his first involvement. Over to Cole Simpson, patiently waits, controls with his front bumper. Ollie Crawshaw so quick and coming across to present himself as an option.
So in the scheme of things, Sevenoaks have done well, haven't they?
They have done brilliantly, as it's a whisker wide of that right-hand post.
So about a flying start from Newcastle, but not able to convert. And really, I'd say Sevenoaks have been comfortable in their defence, but they have been under continuous pressure.
I agree. I've just watched that Ollie Crawshaw chance back. That is such a good effort from the Newcastle captain.
Was it covered?
It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't. Had it had that 1 or 2% more accuracy, it would have probably snuck its way in that right-hand post. Ollie Crawshaw's such a good player. In the games that I've watched of Newcastle, they've been kind of more defensively minded, but this one they're looking to assert themselves offensively, and that's when we see him shine, create, score. And we are approaching the final minute of the first half.
Do they need to stretch it a bit more? Is their pivot too high? Are they compressing it?
Newcastle?
Yeah. Is that making it a bit easier for Sevenoaks?
Potentially. I think if they get that 1-goal buffer, I'd like to see them look to utilise Lee Armstrong a little bit more.
Yeah.
Introduce that fourth player and create those overloads in attack.
It's not his fault. He's barely been involved, has he?
Yeah, but I would say to him, be braver, commit up the court, push more. But I would only do that if and when they get that 1-goal buffer.
Yeah.
As mentioned, there's no jeopardy in this season anymore for Newcastle, so why not throw caution to the wind, even if it does mean your defence is a little bit more vulnerable. But James Mason's been brilliant in this half. Stanley Ball and George Shippey largely reactive rather than proactive. It's just if and when they get opportunities, maybe attacking set pieces, they're looking to be more effective. As Stanley Ball across, whistle in the mouth of Paul Pearson, who blows for half time. It's Newcastle United Foundation 0, Sevenoaks 0. You're joining myself, Ryan Sipple, alongside Nick Woodward. We'll be back very shortly for the second half.
I'm here as a neutral. I'm not, by the way.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the second half of Newcastle United Foundation versus Sevenoaks in Gameweek 4 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership. You're joining myself, Ryan Sipple, alongside Nick Woodward for the action.
Good morning.
Just about.
It is. I only just found out the clocks had gone forward.
Yeah, it was a shock to the system this morning. An hour less in bed. Beautiful pink sky when I opened my curtains. But thankfully I had an early night following a very intense day of football yesterday. But Newcastle, very assertive, had a lot of the possession in the first half, but nothing to really make Sevenoaks pay. It's a very defensive performance, it must be said, from the likes of Mason and Alexander.
Both teams unchanged from the end of the first half.
Yeah, so in their entirety, Lee Armstrong, Ollie Crawshaw, Cole Simpson and Aaron Guthrie for Newcastle United Foundation. Sevenoaks have James Mason, Kyle Alexander, George Shippey and Stanley Bull, as Simpson looks to combine with Ollie Crawshaw.
Now, to your point earlier about Lee Armstrong pushing up, maybe wait for the goal cushion, but there was a gap there that was his.
Yeah, instances like that.
Ooh.
That is because Lee Armstrong comes up to support the attack. That pick-off out to Aaron Guthrie, the crossfield ball to Cole Simpson. And it's not the first time this game there's been an incredibly heavy collision between Alexander and Mason, who are both wincing in pain. But again, it just shows their commitment to the cause to prevent Newcastle from scoring. The 180, brilliant pass from James Mason.
He was under a lot of pressure from Simpson.
He
got it wrong, and that was a rebound.
It looked like it would be an inevitable interception from Crawshaw, but Mason does that so brilliantly. Alexander, once again, that tendency to go on two wheels from Alexander. Paul Pearson just glances behind, having a look at those kind of caster wheels. But it is kind of either kind of the power of his chair and
he's got them in a slightly different place from everyone else, hasn't he? But
yeah,
they are down, like you said.
George Shippey looking to attack Lee Armstrong.
I'm sure it's been mentioned before, but if you're watching and seeing Alexander tip, the caster wheels at stop chairs going over completely, aren't they? A kind of safety mechanism.
Yeah, but unlike, I think, every other player on the court, he's hovering above the ground. They don't roll like everyone else's do.
One is touching, one isn't. And the ref looked at it.
Aaron Guthrie with an attempt at goal, secondary effort across the court. No one there to receive, despite Cole Simpson's attempts to recover possession. Mason, as these two wide wingers in support, goes to George Shippey, who tries to flick it up the court. Crawshaw down the central channel. George Shippey needs to be slightly wider there.
Yeah, they keep trying to dribble past Ollie Crawshaw. That's not going to happen, is it?
No. You've seen far more experienced players struggle against the Newcastle captain, one of the best dribblers in the country. I'd go as far as to say it's flicked over to Stanley Ball. What can he do? He takes it in control, but so often Ollie Crawshaw there to nullify.
So a bit of inexperience. I felt Ball had to make a decision quickly, and Crawshaw's pressure.
I think it's just the puzzle that is Ollie Crawshaw. He has an answer for everything, so even if he did engage that straight away, Crawshaw would have been there to close it down. But I have no doubt inexperience does play a factor. As mentioned in the first half, this is the first Premiership season for George Shippey and Stanley Ball. If you compare that to a player like Ollie Crawshaw, who's actually younger than them, he's been playing for at least 4 or 5 seasons, competed in some of the top games, the WFA Cup final at St George's Park, so much experience, despite being, I think, only 17 years of age. As Mason switches play, but Crawshaw brilliantly controls, just barking instructions at Aaron Guthrie to vacate the space. Ricochets kindly to George Shippey. Just thought he was set away, but Cole Simpson doing that Crawshaw roll brilliantly.
So first 5 gone in this second half. Sevenoaks still holding on, 0-0.
It would register a fantastic point, it must be said, certainly when you consider the fact that GBG Knights are losing currently against Middlesbrough on Court A. So Sevenoaks could close that gap to just a single point. He wouldn't give Sevenoaks too much hope of getting anything against current league leaders Leeds in their final game of Game Week 4. It's Ollie Crawshaw out to Aaron Guthrie. Needs to be a bit wider Switch of play. Cole Simpson, unselfish. Aaron Guthrie,
Oh.
just unsure how to best engage it. Ollie Crawshaw flicked out to Aaron Guthrie once again with an attempt to go slightly forced. There's a real contrast between Cole Simpson and Aaron Guthrie. The former, very unselfish, very purposeful with each and every action. I think Aaron Guthrie can see his name in the headlines and looks to attempt to effort a goal even when the space and the opportunity isn't necessarily there. He's just withdrawn. So it's going to be a switch up. I think you'll probably see Ollie Crawshaw and Cole Simpson go into kind of central pivot pairing once Kieran Steer gets up the court. But Kieran Steer has come on in place of Aaron Guthrie, which is some rare attacking involvement for Lee Armstrong, who swipes it across the box, controlled by Ollie Crawshaw.
It's funny, isn't it? You say rare offensive involvement. A couple of seasons ago, he was amongst the top scorers, wasn't he? They've changed his position significantly.
Very much so. I remember Lee Armstrong when he was formerly of Middlesbrough, as he strikes the ball into Kyle Alexander. But the season in the Championship that Newcastle had is Lee Armstrong across the box to Cole Simpson. The defensive pair doing brilliantly off the left hand upright. One of the best chances they've had all game. Lee Armstrong has had a real impact since coming on, but as I was going to go on to say, in the, I think it was the 2019-20 season, the one that was halted through COVID, Lee Armstrong was fairly prolific for Newcastle as it goes all the way through to Cole Simpson. Attempt at goal blocked by James Mason.
It's a rare misjudgment from Mason there. He played it onto Simpson's bumper, didn't he? But not sure he saw him. Anyway, back with Sevenoaks. Shippy, well intercepted. So I think Armstrong's added something, hasn't he?
Yeah,
Ball's going a bit quicker.
But now they have switched roles, so Kieran Steer likely to take position on this right-hand wing of Newcastle, the left as you view it. So back to a familiar shape, which is a shame. You'd like to, that short cameo, incredibly successful. And this is where I go back to the fact that there's no jeopardy in this season for Newcastle, so they can experiment.
Yeah.
But it's a very fluid system because they've reversed it once again. Now Lee Armstrong just communicating brilliantly with Kieran Steer to say, I'm coming up, you drop back. And this is an exciting prospect. And exactly
Newcastle
what
coach pushing Lee Armstrong up.
Yeah, it's exactly what you'd want to see. Obviously, they've struggled to pick the lock as of just shy of 30 minutes, so they've got 10 left to influence this scoreline as Alexander and Crawshaw, and he's going to dribble it over to an unopposed goal. It's really unfortunate for Sevenoaks, that slight lapse in concentration
And
sees Newcastle United Foundation take the advantage.
Alexander was playing unusually high, wasn't he? You earlier on saying about picking the lock. The lock opened itself.
Yeah, and it's probably no less than Ollie Crawshaw deserves. He's been absolutely fantastic this game, creating the majority of their chances. And
you called him the best dribbler in England.
He's certainly up there. You referenced the likes of Marcus Harrison, Tyler Reeve. Ollie Crawshaw is in that bracket. There's no question about it. And he showed why there. And it's a real shame for Sevenoaks and Kyle Alexander and James Mason, because you could and would probably categorise that more as a mistake, a gifted goal, than being kind of carved open and undone by the opposition. All the way through to James Mason, distributes out, and there's an open goal. Not quite sure why Cole Simpson didn't look for the 180 there. He's been told by his coaches to engage it in that fashion, and it would have almost been a certain second goal had he just spun in a kind of clockwise fashion. So a let off for Sevenoaks, and Simpson has the ball down this right-hand wing. Crawshaw, brilliant switcher play to Lee Armstrong, looking for the gaps in and amongst that sea of black and blue shirts as Armstrong slightly forced. There was never a gap there to be capitalised on. Alexander was hugging this left-hand post, so again, decision-making, there's slight undoing. Mason, Stanley Ball. Crawshaw with so much room in the centre. Sevenoaks shirts reluctant to engage. That will be a sensational goal if they're able to score it. Completely carved Sevenoaks open. It's got so wide and so stretched in the last few minutes, and that's probably purposeful from Sevenoaks, who are looking to get their way back into this. But in doing so, they're going to make their defence far more vulnerable as James Mason's looking for that flick out to George Shippey. Read by Cole Simpson, flicked out by Ollie Crawshaw. Rare mistake from the Newcastle captain.
And once again,
it's probably the right decision, because it's almost dangerous from Kyle Alexander. And there's something that I've observed across the season. This isn't something that's singular for this game. You can't have a player every time they engage a ball going on to just two wheels. There's a reason those kind of tip caster wheels are present.
The other thing is that in this game, the referees are responsible, aren't they, for enforcing the technical rules?
Well, you see where his caster wheels are. They're within his bumper, whereas all the other chairs, they're on the very back. And I think he's being told to potentially come off.
Yeah. He has.
A safety consideration imposed by Paul Pearson. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I agree with it, because it doesn't look safe, does it?
No. And it wasn't caster related, but there was that horrific tip a couple of seasons ago, wasn't there, with Monvillas? And the whole point is keeping the players safe in the chairs.
Absolutely, safety first, paramount for the Wheelchair Football Association. So it's an issue they'll look to address. And as mentioned at the start and across this game, Sevenoaks with no substitutes at their disposal, so they're going to have to finish this game with the three players they have present. Let's just hope that Kyle Alexander can address that issue ahead of their second game of the day, their fifth and final of Game Week 4, and that's against league leaders Leeds. So you do not want to have three players against a team in that formidable form, as Ollie Crawshaw now has so much more space to roam into, and he just plays it off James Mason. Placed down for George Shippey, just in front of us. That did take a touch off James Mason, so corner ball. Slight miscommunication between George Shippey, who's trying to fill in that Kyle Alexander role. Luck certainly not on the side of Sevenoaks.
Glad given it did happen, at least Newcastle were 1-0 up. To have gone off at 1-0 all and probably then concede, that would have felt very harsh. So
Cole Simpson just here, ready to take, strikes it into the box, over to Lee Armstrong. Again, decision making not necessarily there. The gap wasn't present. And substitute signalled, which will probably see Emily Davey come back on in place of Cole Simpson. Good to see her feature again, and what a fantastic opportunity to potentially register her second goal. She'll have far more space than she's probably used to, with Sevenoaks only having three players present. I've never seen a player forced off through kind of a safety consideration before. We've seen red cards in Game Week 4. We've seen yellow card sin bins in Game Week 4. But
yeah,
never.
the head car fails, the controller fails, but
Yeah,
refs have usually sorted that well before the kick-off,
but not
haven't they?
necessarily something that's been enforced by the referee.
And there's no one around to try and fix it for Alexander.
There isn't, as it just fires off James Mason's chair. However unlikely it may be, the scoreline is still just a goal to the good for Newcastle, so a very rare chance for Sevenoaks. Could see them snatch a point here. I'm sure Ollie Crawshaw has it at the top of his list to prevent. There is no option out there. There would have been had they had 4 players present. But it's almost easy now for Newcastle to defend because they can shield Stanley Ball as the only attacking wide winger as we approach the 38th minute.
They're all up, Sevenoaks.
Yeah.
Giving it some.
It will likely be capitalised on by Newcastle if they're able to work the ball round.
As you said a couple of times, it doesn't really matter for Newcastle, does it?
Goes all the way through to Kieran Steer. George Shippey into the 180. That's a nice intention from James Mason. Can connect with the ball so cleanly. But as mentioned, they're just not able to have that width due to the lack of personnel.
So 90 seconds left. Newcastle remain the best of the rest.
Yeah, we'll bring up the live league standings at the conclusion. It looks like Middlesbrough are going to secure 3 points against GBG Knights. And I think that's probably the best bet for safety for one of either Sevenoaks or GBG Knights, and it's to get that 10th place position, which of course does result in a Premiership playoff against whoever finishes 3rd in this season's championship. Full time signalled on court A. We've got just under a minute left as Kieran Steer swipes it towards an open goal. Is it going to go in? It does. It was almost an inevitable due to the shape, due to the bravery of Sevenoaks.
Yeah, I think you've got to give Sevenoaks credit for playing in that way with 3 players and trying to get a draw. But
Ollie Crawshaw just cushioning it into the Scotland International, and that's one of the easiest goals he will score in the National League.
Touch that Mason, it wasn't he? He was only going to send it further into the goal, wasn't he?
Player of the match, Nick.
Oh, it has to be Crawshaw, doesn't it?
It's
locked the defence up, opened for a goal.
Every game that I've watched and commentated on Newcastle, it's just the inevitable factor. He is so important and has such an incredibly bright future. And if he is not one day adorning an England shirt at a major competition, something's gone wrong along the way, because he's destined for it as he just locks up and engages with James Mason. Again, an open goal to aim at. George Shippey just back to recover. Now approaching 30 seconds over the 40. Bit of contact from James Mason, just waved away from Paul Pearson, and now Ollie Crawshaw has an opportunity to register his brace. Emily Davey flicked across the box, maybe into the brave full 360 of Ollie Crawshaw. Just ricochets off James Mason and out of play. I just hope they can get that issue addressed. Sevenoaks, the chair of Kyle Alexander.
Sevenoaks only 4 players at the weekend, so can't lose one.
Absolutely you can't, let alone when you consider their opposition in Leeds, and that is the full-time whistle. It is a well-worked, well-earned 3 points for Newcastle.
Well done, Newcastle.
To get the job done. As promised, the live league table will show you that Newcastle have now 29 points from their 18 games. They have played 2 more than their closest rivals in West Brom, Throstles and Villa, who sit on 25 and or 24 points. but it's job done so far, and they have, I believe, one final game this weekend. No, apologies, that was their final game of the weekend, so we will see them back in game week 5 of the Premiership, where they take on Brussels, Teesside, Leeds and Middlesbrough.
Can't be the last, I think. 24 games a season.
22 league games of the season. Oh. Close.
How many years have I been watching this? Well done, Newcastle.
Yep. Huge thank you to everyone that's tuned in, to myself and Nick in game week 4 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership.